All right. Hi, folks. Welcome to our e-learning event today, our May event. Very excited to be continuing the series we've been running on community-based research as a way to respond to crises of the environment and climate change that we're faced with in society. We have a wonderful presentation today about the Neighbourwoods project, a community university collaboration that will be presented by Danijela Puric-Mladenovic and Judy Gibson. As we get started today, I want to just let folks know that you are able to turn on closed captioning for this event if you would like by clicking on the Show Captions button on your toolbar. We do also have translation enabled, so you're able to choose which language you would like your captions to appear in if you would like them to appear in a language other than English. We have AI-generated Zoom translation available for the event today as well. I would also like to acknowledge as we get started today that this event is being presented by Community-Based Research Canada, and we operate from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Attawandaron or neutral peoples. Our offices are located out of the Wilfrid Laurier University campus, which is located on the Haldimand Tract. And the Haldimand Tract was land promised to the Six Nations of the Grand River in 1784. It's a tract of land including 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, approximately 950,000 acres. This land was promised to the Six Nations of the Grand River, and their land comprises now only less than 5% of what was originally promised. We give thanks for the privilege to work and live on this land known as Waterloo, Ontario, and Community-Based Research Canada is committed to continually building relationships with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples throughout Turtle Island, our land known as Canada, as well as promoting research projects that actively work towards reconciliation. If anyone here with us today comes from a land or territory and you know whose traditional territory you're coming from and you would like to share with us, we welcome you to do so in the chat box. And as I said, the presentation today is brought to you by Community-Based Research Canada. In case anyone here is unfamiliar with us, new to our organization, we are a membership-based organization with a mission of advancing community-based research excellence in Canada by strengthening partnerships, building or bridging capacities, mobilizing knowledge, and championing community-based research. We are a social enterprise. We're a nonprofit funded entirely by our membership base. We don't receive any core funding for the programming that we run. And our members include colleges, universities, community organizations, and government departments. As part of the programming we provide to our organizations, our members, we provide these e-learning events as well as community of practice and other events. You can find more information on our upcoming events on our website that my colleague Stella has pasted in the chat there. And I did not introduce myself at the beginning, but my name is Amanda Demmer. I'm the Learning Specialist and Program Coordinator for Community-Based Research Canada and the facilitator for the event today. With me as well as my colleague Stella, who is our Membership Coordinator and maybe a familiar name for folks. Each of our e-learning events, we open by trying to amplify the calls from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action. So I try to choose one of the calls to action that resonates with the theme, the topic of the event each month. And today I chose to amplify call to action number 47. We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to repudiate concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous peoples and lands, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and to reform those laws, government policies, and litigation strategies that continue to rely on such concepts. Again, Community-Based Research Canada is committed to continual reflections on the interconnection between truth and reconciliation and the various topics we approach using community-based research. And of course, when we're talking about environment and climate change, we can really respect and learn from the respect and connection to the land that First Nations peoples know about and promote, and we can look to learn from their own connection and knowledge of the land. Our agenda today, I'll shortly be passing it over to our presenters who will give us a presentation followed by a question and answer period. So during the presentation, I encourage folks, you're welcome to turn on your cameras if you would like. And we encourage you anytime during the presentation, if you do have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat box at any time. When we get to the question and answer period at the end of the presentation, I'll start by going to any questions that have come in the chat box already. So if you do have a question, again, anytime during the presentation, please feel free to put it in that chat box as you go along. And then we'll answer those questions when we get to that question and answer period. We'll wrap up the event right on time, 1 o'clock Eastern time today. So without further ado, I'm very excited and pleased to introduce this month's topic. So this month we have Danijela Puric-Mladenovic, an assistant professor from the John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape, and Design at the University of Toronto, and Judy Gibson, the chair of the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Committee. And Danijela and Judy are here to talk to us about the Long Branch Neighbourhood Association partnership with the University of Toronto to implement Neighbourwoods. So we'll hear all about this implementation and how this community university research collaboration has had a local impact in the Long Branch neighborhood. So I'll have a quick transition here as I stop my screen share, and Danijela, you can begin sharing your screen now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's. Okay, I think it should be now on screen.
Excellent.
I am part of forestry at Daniel's faculty. U of T used to have faculty of forestry, and now that's department as within landscape architecture and architecture. Just I cannot forget that forestry part. So let me see. I'll just give quick introduction how all of this became. It's no surprise that Canada, even though it has a huge land base, lots of forest, it's a very urban land. Population, it's very urban. Over 85% of people live in urban areas, which has its advantages and obviously disadvantages, and it's no surprise to all of us that the highest density it's in southern Ontario and Quebec, eastern Canada, but definitely southern Ontario is the most developed and with the highest density. And along the lines, what we were just previously mentioned and heard, climate change, all the pressures that the entire globe is facing, all of that, it's way more pronounced in urban areas. Just because of the development, and obviously one way to improve those conditions is by having trees and vegetation, which provide a range of ecological services, benefits, and I'm not going to name all of them, but simply there is desire to have more livable communities, and trees and natural vegetation definitely help with that. In recent years, we hear about this topic. Oh, it's natural climate solution, but I can tell you it's the same. It's about trees. It's just a new buzzword that we keep using for the same needs and the same problems that we used to have. Also, what came in particularly after COVID and during COVID, people realized that the only place that they were able to go was green space, and that's definitely promoted even more connection between people and green space and tree canopy in urban areas. So going back to that yes, Canada, it's urban, and we have many cities and towns based on the research that we've done across Canada. It turned out that on average, about more than 1/3 of the land base, it's in residential areas. And in some of these towns, that could be 50 to 70% residential areas. So when we look at our urban areas, And with that, the urban canopy, we can see that a huge proportion of that, in fact, is in residential areas. And we knew this from a long time ago when we started with Neighbourwoods program. Recognize that, in fact, there is no strategic program, stewardship, or managing those trees that they contribute to their landowners, but they could contribute to the neighbors and the entire blocks or neighborhoods as we have them in Toronto. So the Neighbourwoods was developed, I would say now, quite a bit long time ago, and based on that recognition that someone needs to look after those trees in residential areas, the important component of urban forest. And that's in the hands of the community. So with Dr. Andy Kenny and myself, we developed a program first for inventory and monitoring those trees, that it's a standard, that it's comprehensive, with the main objective being education of the public. And the program is made in such a way that we are able to train the public, and they can collect quite impressive data set, and not just data collection for the data collection, but use that information to support stewardship and strategic urban forest management and planning. As I mentioned, it's a tool for urban trees inventory, monitoring, and stewardship. Over the years, what we learn empowers residents to take action, develop knowledge, and you, as we will see later on, Long Branch really speaks to that. And I just have to say that this is probably one of the first, if not the first, urban forest citizen science program in Canada, because the first time we did it was 1995. So the main goal is community engagement, educating and engaging people to look after the resource, what they have. Of course, when that data is collected, there are many practical applications, and it's related to how to manage urban forest, what to conserve, what to restore and plant, decision making, and so on. But also, this information collected by community provides a really rich data set for research. And we are getting into the monitoring stage, where we can measure many things, how urban forest has changed. Over the years, we have had many communities across Southern Ontario. I'm not going to list all of them, because the emphasis is definitely on Long Branch, that has been the longest partner with us for we are getting into our eighth year. And all of these communities that I mentioned previously, it's typically when they approach us about neighborhoods, there is an issue that it's coming, or that it's pressing to their community. Maybe that they have their older trees are dying off because of the natural cause. It could be because of the pressure of development and changes that are happening to the neighborhood. Sometimes communities, they do want to take action and think ahead of time and preserve their canopy to combat climate change. And often, one reason could be we don't know what we have in our neighborhood, and we would like to know and get better sense of the resources that we have. in all, typically it's something that prompts communities to engage us, which was a similar case with Long Branch. And I'll pass the slides now to Judy.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. And I'll just let you know when to move on to the next
Yeah.
one. Yes, so I'm Judy Gibson, as was already mentioned. So I've been involved with this program since I became, since Long Branch Neighborhood Association was formed. I was introduced to Danielle, and I'll get into that a bit more. But it was driven by our tree canopy loss, and specifically our loss due to development. I mean, we've had loss due to ice storms, as every neighborhood has had, but with ours, what was startling is the change with development. As you'll see on the left, at the top left, this is a typical property in Long Branch where the house is small relative to a large green yard, large trees above it. And then on the right shows a redevelopment where the houses are now much, much larger. The tree canopy is gone. This is actually an older photo. There's fewer trees around it because what we find is the trees die after development as well. It's a slower process sometimes. They don't come down right at the beginning all the time, but they come down later. And at the bottom, you can actually see a timestamp where 2009. The black circle is around tree canopies. And then on the right-hand side in 2018, after redevelopment of the property, you can see how much of the tree canopy and trees were removed. So this is typically what's happening in Long Branch. Go to the next slide, please, Daniela. So this is where Long Branch is. For those of you who may not be familiar, we're based in Toronto. We're in the far west, southern west corner of Toronto. We're bounded by parks. So on the left is Etobicoke Creek, and it's a greenbelt ravine that comes down from the greenbelt around Toronto. And so there's a lot of wildlife and nature that comes down along that ravine. And on the right-hand side is a man-made park, Colonel Sam Smith Park. But we're along Lake Ontario, the north shore of Lake Ontario, and we're on a migratory route for birds, and we've got a lot of wildlife that cohabits well within the community, and we have a lot of mature trees. Where we got involved was our tree canopy declined. It was initially at 27% in 2009, and then it's now gone down to 15% in 2018. So it's a huge decrease in tree canopy. And it was noticeable. Our streets were changing the character of the streets. We're seeing, trees coming down, heat going up, people having to add air conditioning to their homes where they didn't need it before. And the main cause was residential redevelopment and the removal of these mature trees with limited replanting and hardscaping all around us. And the city of Toronto, again, for those of you who may not be familiar, set a goal quite a while back to have a 40% tree canopy by 2050. And you can see in Long Branch in particular, it's going in the wrong direction. Next slide, please. So what happened was in 2017, we formed the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, and I happened to have two large maples in my backyard, and I had a relationship with an arborist. So I reached out to my arborist and I said, what can we do about this? And he said, well, you need to speak to the people at University of Toronto. And that's how I got linked in with Danijela back in 2018. So the goal was at the time was to address the tree canopy loss and really try to gain and promote urban forest stewardship. So we started getting baseline data, and now we've been throughout the years, every year we're doing education, engaging the public, and looking at the data as it progresses. Next slide, please. What we found really helpful with Neighbourwoods is it gave us a place to start. And that's what I really learned from working with Danijela is you need to know what you have to begin with in order to know what to protect. And that really resonated with us at the beginning and still does. So really, what's the baseline? What do we have? What do we know about what we have? Where is it located? How healthy are our trees? Like, maybe they're big, but they're not healthy. And Danijela mentioned some neighborhoods, maybe their trees are declining. That's not the case in our neighborhood. They're healthy. How supportive is our community? In our neighborhood, most people were drawn to the neighborhood because of the trees and because of the characters. So the community is extremely supportive. And then we sat around and we said, well, what are we going to do about it? So the Neighbourwoods protocol gave us a structure. Danijela gave us the training and helped us to develop an approach to actually collecting some data. And the obvious things that we collect is the location of the trees, the species, the size, the condition they're in, if there's any conflicts, etc. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that what we did is we created a committee in order to do this and formalize it. So we're incorporated not-for-profit neighborhood association. We have an elected board of directors with a chair and vice chairs and committees. And as I mentioned earlier, I chair the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Committee, which we set very clear goals. So what we've done since 2018, we've actually inventoried close to 13,000 trees on private property. Most of them are on private property that we inventory. And each year we hire students, we apply for grants, we hire students. We're fortunate to have the relationship with Danijela and the University of Toronto, where the students are trained by Danijela on tree data collection. They're trained to identify trees, so they actually conduct the tree inventory using the protocol and with the tools. And the community supports it by allowing the students to access their yards to help them gain access to their neighbors. And because to do it on private property, you have to get into people's backyards and you need permission to collect that data. And we felt that we also need to celebrate what we're doing around trees. So we created the Tree Fest, which takes place every fall in Long Branch. And this will be our 7th annual Tree Fest. And we're getting, anywhere from about 1,500 close to 2,000 people coming out in the community. It's a community celebration. And right from the beginning, we said it's got to attract people that not are necessarily tree lovers, but that want to be part of a community and want to learn more about what's going on. And it's been extremely successful. It's increased the residents' engagement, increases people knowledge about trees. And we also apply for grants through the City of Toronto that enables us to give away native trees and shrubs. And people have really embraced that. We're getting ready for another one. This spring we'll probably give away 750 trees. And in the fall, we'll give away about another 500 trees. In total, we've given away well over 7,000 trees since we've been doing the tree giveaways. And these are planted by residents who put them on their property, care for them, and love their little trees. Next slide, please. So the Neighbourwoods protocol, as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of data that's collected that's really useful. And our students are trained in order to collect the data. And the Neighbourwoods protocol, it assesses the health of the tree. And again, these students, some of them come from forestry backgrounds, environmental backgrounds, some don't. Some are just more outdoorsy students that want to work outdoors. And the training allows them to identify, does the tree have an unbalanced crown? What sort of shape is the foliage in? Are there dead or broken branches? Is there a lean to the tree, etc.? So there's a number of very specific criteria that are assessed through the Neighbourwoods protocols, and the students are trained on how to monitor them and measure them and put it in such a format that we can use the data. Next slide, please. And so this is some examples of our tree inventory teams. This was a group of students. We put signs out so people know the tree inventory is in process. Next slide. And here's more of the teams over the years. So we have typically a team of tree stewards. We have students that are involved in organizing events in Tree Fest. And we have a tree stewardship lead who leads tree interpretive walks and does educational programs and outreach into the community over the summer. And you can see we also brand and identify the students with t-shirts. The community sees them walking around. They recognize our students and they know when the tree inventory is in process. Next slide. So this is some of the data that's collected, and this is showing Long Branch again, and now you're seeing the parcels of land that have been inventoried. So everything that's in green has been inventoried at least once, and as Danijela mentioned, we're now going back and starting to monitor and taking a look at the impact since 2018 of the program. And what's changed? Have people planted trees? Have they lost trees? Have the trees grown? Are they declining in health, etc.? And you can see that the vast majority of the people in the community give permission for the students to enter the property. Some that are in gray are not sampled. And again, the students are only there for a couple months in the summer. They may not be able to access the residence. We do flyers, we try to get access, but sometimes it's a bit challenging. But very few people actually refuse permission. And that's usually an educational thing. And eventually they'll give permission. Next slide. Again, a different view on how the data is collected and how the trees are mapped. On the right-hand side are some of the heritage trees that we identified through this process. And they were officially recognized as heritage trees with additional protection. You can see the size of the trees that we discovered through this process. Next slide. And this is another tree that we tried to get as a heritage tree. But the community used it. The community got behind the black barn maple, and everybody wanted to protect it. This is a part of the community where there is actually very, very little tree canopy coverage. And this is a single healthy, extremely healthy tree that was going to be destroyed through a development. And through the activity of this separate committee, which was the Save the Black Barn Maple Committee, they were able to save the tree. Next slide. And so again, I think that we've been very grateful for the partnership with the University of Toronto. The whole community is engaged. There's very few people that don't support it. Most people in the neighborhood are proud of the program and very proud to be part of it. And it does show how combining data and research really helps the community use the data and speak about it and build awareness about what's important about forest stewardship and management of trees. And they're proud of the neighborhood. And hopefully as we move through with monitoring, we'll see that we've had an impact on saving and growing our tree canopy. I'll pass it back to Danijela.
Yeah, so I'll just talk a little bit how we had to definitely have a shared vision, which it's to conserve what we have through stewardship, to engage the public and have really livable and green communities. And I think that's the thread that kept us going for 8 years now. The other was that from academia and community side, it's U of T, it's in Toronto, and we try to help address local challenges. I know that many universities, and it sounds like, oh, global, and we work here and there in this country, not to downplay that, but our approach, it's really working closely with our communities in not just in Toronto, in Ontario, but as I said, with Long Branch gave us that we can help them with our science and research to make a change. And which Judy provided an overview of what has happened in Long Branch for over the past seven years. And definitely with Long Branch, we build synergy and we support each other, and I'll touch on that a bit more later on. So definitely now when we reflect on the past 8 years, it has been mutual growth for both, for the community, but also for us coming from academia. Definitely it's great to see that the protocol and the whole process works with another community. We are happy that we provide training and all sorts of support to Long Branch over the summer. One exciting thing is that we have a chance to transfer knowledge and technology to the community and see that that process is really working. From my perspective, I'm of course I want to engage our students, in particularly students of Master of Forest Conservation. They have their summer internships, which are required by the program. and they spend summer with Judy, provides them summer employment. And of course, they produce some student papers and student work as part of that. I think Judy has covered quite well how the community benefits from this, but from my perspective, it's really great to see that amount of energy, because all the leadership which Long Branch has, and definitely with Judy, it's volunteering, and it's amazing to see how with the volunteering effort, what could be done. The community definitely provides supervision of students over the summer, which is really great, and definitely financial support for students. And Judy is kind enough to come and give lectures to our undergraduate and graduate classes. I'll get a little bit more into the specifics from both academia and from the community side. So definitely, as Judy mentioned, with over 12,000 trees, you can just imagine the richness of the data set that we have. Many of the students that work with Judy, they gain hands-on experience, which is the quality probably the same, and even probably higher than if they spend their summer, let's say, working with municipality. Not to downplay municipality, but what's happening with our students spending summer with the community is that the technical side, it's definitely there, but there is that additional side that they are working with public, with the community members. For each of those parcels, they're making connection with people, and that's really unique. Based on our work for the past couple of years, I introduced community engagement in urban forestry as a one-off lecture in my urban forest conservation class. And again, Judy is kind enough to come and gives those lectures, and those are the lectures that definitely we have the most questions by students. Pathways to professional growth. Just recently, Judy and I were talking about this. Long Branch has students from all sorts of background coming and helping with tree inventory. And what has happened, some of those students with a music background, with environmental background, after spending the summer or two doing tree inventory with Long Branch and community engagement, they decided to come and do Master of Forest Conservation at U of T. And we, for 7 years, we had 4 students coming from Long Branch, which is again something very unique, that those young people switch in some cases their profession entirely from music to urban forest conservation. I'll briefly touch on the data use. As I said, it's a very rich data set, and we can look individual tree, we can look individual species, we can look what's happening at a particular land parcel, the entire community. So from the research side, data set, it's very rich, but also data collected has a very practical information and the relevance to the community itself. I'll just give some examples which are very preliminary from based on the data that we collect. We can look like which tree species is doing well, how tree condition of those species are at the end, is Norway maple, which we know it's invasive. It's not that magic species. It's just, I think it's a myth that it's something special out there, because our data shows, in fact, that it has a lots of problem. At the parcel level of the parcel, definitely this data provide tons of information to talk to landowners, to know, let's say, like in this red pocket on one of the parcels that there are trees that are declining, and that could be a potential for management and taking action earlier rather than waiting for trees to die. Judy already touched on canopy loss. We had one of our first Master of Forest Conservation student that spent time, summertime with Long Branch, Jackie DeSantis, did an excellent analysis looking how tree loss has an impact not only on the parcel that lost the trees, but it has an impact on adjacent parcel and the entire community. And this was a capstone paper of Jackie specific to Long Branch. The other student, Master of Forest Conservation, for example, he looked at tree condition and tree health in Long Branch, and just as an example showing that it's quite impressive to see that Long Branch still has lots of silver maples, which are not planted anymore in Toronto, but at one point, silver maples were planted quite a bit across our urban communities. And those most of those silver maples are, like example here, those big old trees that, yeah, they some of them are at the end of their lifespan, but they often get replaced with something that provides way less canopy. The other surprise, not surprise, kind of we knew this, but when we see the number, it was the amount of red oak and the size of those oaks within Long Branch, because definitely something that we did not talk much about is that some of these trees that we see in Long Branch, they're the remnants of what used to be there 200 years ago, what trees would grow. As Judy mentioned, we look, when we do the inventory, we record also information per parcel, and one of the students did, Sylvia, did her study looking on parcels that have trees, that have no trees, and what we found that about 30% of residential parcels had no trees. So they may not have trees because they benefit from the two adjacent parcels that have quite green canopy. The other finding that was interesting from her study and using the Neighbourwoods data that on average, parcels have 30% canopy cover. Obviously, some parcels have 70 and more, and some parcels have none. But that's a number that tells us, in a way, that people are willing to have about 1/3 of their property being under the canopy. Obviously, they want to have other things and gardens and so on, which it does help with the planning where to plant trees and to think where and how to increase canopy cover. So as we already touched on this, we went from inventory to monitoring, and now last year we started reassessing some trees and parcels that we've done before, and it's really amazing to see that we can say that now Long Branch is doing Neighbourwoods monitoring, and the plan is to continue this this summer and hopefully beyond. One thing that we did not talk much about, yes, we did sample lots of trees, but what's unique about Long Branch that it's also we do hedges. And we, Neighbourwoods has a separate protocol for mapping the hedges, and that's, they might be a little bit neglected part of the green infrastructure. But we find that particularly in these narrow spaces, hedges are a very critical component, and it's no surprise that most of them are made of eastern white cedar. The community has used the data to help them develop their young trees maintenance protocol, and our students, as part of the course, were engaged in developing a management plan and suggestion how that could be done. The data provides a section about trees, which definitely helps Long Branch with tree species selection. And as we were saying previously, related to hedges, sometimes hedges get forgotten, and that eastern white cedar grows quite big. So it's fairly frequent species in Long Branch. But we can see that there are, besides silver maple and red oak that we mentioned, there is quite a bit of white spruce, which is no surprise because we see that in other parts of our residential area with white spruce and Colorado spruce. People like that Christmassy feeling in front of their homes. So it does provide a cross section what of these species are native and what non-native species are planted in backyards, because definitely people are gardeners. They might not be thinking about necessarily urban forest, but they like Japanese red maple or let's say lilacs or other species. Some of these species that you see as a Siberian elm and Manitoba maple, they are self-established most of the time, and they're in between the fences. So that's interesting ecology that it's happening on these parcels as well. So as mentioned, we continue our collaboration, and again, I know I can speak for myself. I'm very fortunate to work with Long Branch, and it's amazing to mark the our 8th summer. And what's more amazing, because as I mentioned, that all of this work by Long Branch, it's a volunteering, and we know that it's very hard to keep that momentum for a long period of time. Yeah, thanks to Judy and her team. Is everything rosy? Probably not in terms of our relationship. Honestly, as I mentioned previously, we know what we want. We have the same vision. But what we find, and probably more from my side, because trying to find research funding to support this type of work, where we could take more advantage of the data that we collected, it's very hard. Definitely lack of funding for this type of research, it's out there, because that's not something that it's seen as, who is going to fund community engagement and stewardship. It's really challenging. And from my perspective, I could say that there is that a bias in research recognition. And it didn't start with Long Branch. We know that from the past 30 years that the major federal funding, for example, do not prioritize this type of research, where we are in between natural resources and social sciences. Getting funding for community-led forest monitoring stewardship fund, maybe possible if you go to even for the city of Toronto, they are more willing to fund planting. Am I right, Judy? Than tree maintenance and community engagement. And definitely research that sets priority for engaging local knowledge, knowledge of people like those living in Long Branch, it's still not priority. However, as I mentioned, all of this doesn't preclude us to go ahead, because you know, if there is funding, we could have tapped into the communities probably that are not like a Long Branch, nothing bad, don't take me wrong, but Long Branch, because of the their leadership, experience, ability to write those proposals, to tap into the resources, we can do that. But we can imagine that there are so many other communities that absolutely have no knowledge like that. They have no ability, and I have to say, we are missing them because we don't have funding to support getting, let's say, in I don't know, Scarborough or areas where we know the canopy it's lower, but and they need lots of activities like this. So that's the main barrier. But for us, working with Long Branch, we find, I think, Judy, we find our ways to do it. And again, I have to stress that Judy's work and all my engagement, it's volunteer. All our funding, anything goes towards students. Even like the equipment we use we find ways how to borrow that. So we don't spend much money on that. So yeah, with that, I think that's our thank you for giving us a chance to present what we've been doing, and we are looking forward for questions.
Thank you so much, Danijela and Judy. It's so interesting hearing about the impact you've had on local communities and the opportunities you've provided for students to really get involved in the local research. If folks have any questions, I didn't see any questions come in during the presentation, so now is the time to enter your questions in the chat box. If you do have any questions for Danijela and Judy about their presentation today or that Neighbourwoods collaboration. And maybe to kick things off, I'm curious, so you talked a lot there at the end about, you know, some of the barriers that you've faced regarding funding and other ways of going about this project. And you did talk a little bit about, you know, successes in the partnership, but I'm wondering if you can expand on just really what you consider to be maybe the key principles that make this partnership between you, Danijela, and the University of Toronto, and you, Judy, and the community. What are some of the key principles of that relationship or that partnership that make it work well for you to continue to collaborate?
You know, I'll go maybe from my side and then let Judy from her community side. I never seen this. I'll be honest. Let's be honest. I've been working in Southern Ontario for so long. I know Southern Ontario by my heart. I used to work for Ontario government. And let's be honest, in both any level of government, even in academia, there are brick walls. There are ceilings. You can have the best idea, but we've been doing it this way. That might not be like a deep research. What has inspired me is willingness of people to take, instead of, you know, maybe going and traveling and doing something else. I know how much time Judy spends, let's say, organizing these people, getting proposals. And for me, I'm a tree hugger, that, you know, I cannot say no if I see that energy. I cannot say, yeah, you know what, I don't have funding, I'm not going, I don't have, you know, unless it's NSERC or SHIRK, I'm not going to work. Because to me, that's my impact. Like all of those kids that Judy managed to get funding, you know, they came to forest conservation. What else is better? And their impact and their footprint, those young people, it's even bigger. So that's, to me, I believe in what I do. And when I see that people like Judy and her community, they really care, with no resources, you know, I'll do everything to support them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Danijela. And it's a two-way street, right? Danijela as well is extremely enthusiastic and supportive. And from my perspective, it's a partnership between Long Branch and the U of T, but it goes beyond that. Without the support from other levels and other grants, we would not be able to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be quite frank, like we apply for grants, and we're fortunate the City of Toronto has for the last 6 years approved a grant for us that supports our tree stewardship lead. And with that leadership, who has the on-the-ground ability to lead the education, that helps us tremendously to have that. And then we've also received support from the federal government through Canada Summer Jobs with our students. So we did it right through the pandemic when nobody else could hire students. I think very few people were able to hire students. And it was a huge advantage for us that our jobs were outside. We never missed a beat because our students were outside. They practiced all the COVID protocols, and we were able to continue. So we've been fortunate. It's been a bit of luck. And, you know, it's a broader partnership, and, you know, with arborists, we partner with arborists. And the community steps up as well. We have a lot of volunteers. It's not just me, it's a whole team effort. So we're very fortunate. And we hope it continues.
What really strikes me, and you both have really spoken to this, but you know, we often get asked by a lot of emerging researchers who are interested in community-based research, like how do you get started connecting with the community and forging these partnerships? And what really strikes me is for both of you, this is an issue that you really care about, you're passionate about, you're willing to, you know, donate that time and push those barriers to make this happen. So I think, you know, that's something we often tell new researchers. If you want to get engaged in community-based research, it takes that passion, find something you care about. And it's the people as well. So as much as it's the collaboration between U of T and Long Branch Association, and as much as you've acknowledged, Judy, there's lots of other people and partners here. It's the two of you, like Danijela and Judy, in that personal relationship. It seems like you have that really enables this to thrive as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm seeing 2 more questions have come in. So Sydney, I see your question that you've asked first, but I'm going to jump because I think Bethany's question is related to what we're speaking about here. So we'll go to Bethany, your question first, and then I'll go up to Sydney's question. So Bethany is asking, what type of groundwork within the University of Toronto was needed to lay the foundation for the Neighbourwoods project so that you could deal with these barriers you've talked about, the funding barriers for this type of community-based applied research? So maybe Danijela, more a question for you.
Yeah. So as I said, I started to work as a research assistant when I came from Europe. My first job was with Dr. Andy Kenny in his lab, urban forestry. And in 1995, we developed Neighbourwoods protocol. I came with experience, but it was, you know, the two of us were just inspired and developed the protocol. We tested it, of course. Our St. George campus, it was a testing ground. We had a project in Elora. And then every year since 1995, we had one community or 2 or 3 working with us. They would approach us. And we kept going. We developed the manual. With the technology now that it's available, data collection, it's on tablets. So it's the same. Both Dr. Kenny, who is retired now, and leads Neighbourwoods in Ottawa, just because of geography. It's closer to him. Yeah, we developed, we tested the protocol 1 year. Let's say we learned that maybe we need to add this, we need to make a manual that it's more visual. We had Neighbourwoods training since 1995 every year for 2 days. Yeah, we kept going. We wrote many proposals asking for resources, but probably the best funds were from communities and small funds, mainly to support students, or maybe buy a piece of equipment that we can share with the community. Yeah, it's again, maybe sometime, you think like, why I do this? I could have write probably 10 papers instead of spending time on this, but it's there is time in your life when you come into peace with yourself, what's important. And as I said, that the people side, I could have paper that will sit on the shelf and, few academics will read it. I'm sorry, maybe it's a little bit blunt. I measure my impact, maybe it comes with age in a different way.
Danijela, and that's very aligned with, in community-based research, we are trying to push those boundaries of how we consider research impact. And it does need to be measured in these more community-driven ways instead of those academic metrics of H index and so on. Yeah. So Sydney asked, I think, a really interesting and important question here. So Sydney has said, I'm curious about Indigenous collaboration and consultation in this work. For instance, has there been a lot of collaboration or consideration for things such as traditional ecological knowledge and how it could aid this work? So Judy or Danijela, is that something, are Indigenous collaborations or consultations part of this work, or is that perhaps a future opportunity? Can you speak at all about how that has come into this project?
Maybe I can speak a little bit on our neighborhood makeup. So our neighborhood, the data on our neighborhood, it's 9% of people within the neighborhood identify as Indigenous. So we do have a high percentage of Indigenous in our population, and they're part of the community and they're active. Are they formalized? Is there a formal Indigenous role? Not yet. We've tried to create an Indigenous subcommittee within Long Branch. And again, people that are involved volunteering are stretched so thin. And I think there is an interest down the road in doing something along that line, but we don't have it formalized yet. We have people that we know that are members of the Indigenous community that participate actively in Tree Fest and actively in our activities. But as a formal and we've developed those relationships, but as part of this Neighbourwoods, not yet. That might be something down the road.
I may just add from time to time, because being in academia, I get all of those emails it gets, and I think it was a Long Branch when we had an issue with eastern white cedar fence that was supposed to be removed. And then, what's the policy to protect the fence? And that's where Indigenous voice was very strong. Because it's more than a fence. It's a habitat. It's it's a species of special concern. So definitely, Indigenous voices are very important. And I'll be honest, it's way much easier to talk to Indigenous people because they get it. You don't need to explain some of these things. A couple of years ago, during COVID, there was a group of Indigenous youth that was trained kind of remotely doing neighborhoods, but beyond that, we haven't gone and per se look at this. I personally believe that there is a huge potential, like just looking at species, what native species, as I mentioned for Long Branch, those silver maples, those big oaks, they're remnants of the original vegetation. And that's the connection with the land and forest that used to be at one point. And keeping that, it's very, very important. Engaging Indigenous or any other youth, I think it's a huge potential because in particularly our little case study shows that them students pursue Master of Forest Conservation after spending time in Long Branch.
It sounds like it could be since Neighbourwoods is implemented in different neighborhoods across Canada, it could be a really interesting case study to try to pilot, you know, a version of Neighbourwoods that incorporates traditional ecological knowledge frameworks in areas such as, you know, Indigenous communities or reserves. So that could be, you know, future potentials. And it does sound like there's lots of synergies you're seeing between some of the First Nations activism for the lands and the way your data can empower that activism. So thank you for speaking to that. And we are just about out of time today. My clock just rolled over to 1 o'clock here. I do see Andy left some comments in the chat. So quickly to acknowledge those. Andy said that research funding in this area is tight, but urban climate change initiatives should have ongoing funding opportunities to consider. Consideration needs to be given to educational programs that educate folks in the need to use successional forests. Education and maintenance is also needed. I know that's something I could use even in my own backyard. How do I keep the trees healthy? And mentioning again that students are a great resource, as you've shown through your example. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today. Thank you, Judy and Danijela. We hope we see folks at future e-learning events. Our June e-learning event will be announced soon. It'll be a speaker from University of Winnipeg, and stay tuned in the next week or so for those details to come out. Thank you again for joining us, folks. You'll find the e-learning recording and the slides up on our website within the coming days. If you would like to revisit this event, send it out to anyone, share it within your networks. And thank you, of course, Judy and Danijela, both for being here and sharing your presentation today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.